Could you please give us your name and company name?
My name is Hal, H-A-L, Spoden, S-P-O-D-E-N. And the firm here is Spoden and Wilson Consulting Engineers.
Okay. Would you mind telling us some of your personal history, such as where you were born, schools attended, military civil services, etc.?
Well, I was born on a farm in western New York State. It was a fruit farm. We had about 45 acres of grapes. We sold our grapes to Welch's. I still buy Welch's. And went to high school there. Went to the University of Michigan. I worked my way through. And then following that, I went with American Bridge Company in Ambridge, Pennsylvania, then with Tennessee Valley Authority, then with Pan American Airways Africa Limited. When Pearl Harbor happened, I was in Africa at the time, and then when we went to war, I stayed there. We were putting an airline in. Roosevelt wanted to help Churchill. We put an airline in across Africa to supply the British. We weren't at war yet. Then when war broke out, I was in charge of a base, building a base in the center of our route in Africa, in Nigeria. Then came back, stayed in Pan Am, went to Alaska, British Columbia, then Alaska, and then got the Naval Reserve in Alaska. Came back to Knoxville, worked in K-25 atomic bomb plant, and then requested active duty in the Navy, and was with the Naval Air Transport Service in California when the end of World War II occurred. Came back to Knoxville, worked with an architecture firm, then came to Kingsport in 1951, and had this office for 50 years.
So what is your interest in the region's history?
It's really based on my wife. My wife died in 1999, and she's been extremely interested in historical research, and really devoted her life to it, and it rubbed off on me. She was so busy with it, I never saw her, so I got used to it too. And this area is just unbelievably full of nationally important historical occurrences. Wonderful place. Just more things happen here than I've lived in California, I've lived in Michigan, I lived in the state of Washington, New York State. I've lived in a lot of places. Never lived in any place that had so much going on of important historical events as right here.
So would you mind telling us about how the Netherland Inn came into existence?
Well, in the late 60s, Mrs. Spoden and Lucy May Krimble were interested in doing something about the building because the lady who owned it had just died, and her daughter, who lived in Knoxville, was going to have to do something in the building. So they were very active in encouraging preservation of the building, and really it was their efforts that created it. I think, particularly if Mrs. Spoden had never lived, I doubt if we'd have a Netherland Inn today.
Why would local people and tourists be interested in visiting the Netherland Inn?
Well, there are a number of reasons. The Netherland Inn is quite remarkable. In the early years, we had help from Henry Judge with the National Park Service, and he's the premier historical research architect for the National Park Service, and he was working with the state on the Capitol in Nashville, and heard about the inn and stopped and looked at it and came back 3 times without charging us. He gave us advice, and he said that he felt that it was a remarkable building. It is so old and had been owned by one family for such a long time that there had been practically no changes in the building. And he made the statement that he felt that it would probably be the most authentic restoration of that age that he'd had contact with. And he'd had contact all over this continent with nationally important buildings. And it's unique in that it's had so few changes. It's the original building in many ways. And when there's been restoration, it's been done authentically, and it fits what is the way it should be restored, just like the original. I've worked on a number of restoration projects, like John and Landon Carter Mansion and Elizabeth and several others, and they've all had so many changes that they're not particularly authentic. The inn is just like it originally was, almost entirely.
Could you please tell us about the history of Long Island?
Long Island is this remarkably historic spot. Its primary uniqueness is the fact that the Cherokee Indians used it as a peace island. There was never any war activity, and they retained ownership for years. In fact, the Cherokees gave up land to the whites as far as Rogersville, and prior to 1800, but they retained ownership of the island until the Treaty of Dearborn in 1806. And although the whites owned land all even west of here, they gave the land west of here, but they didn't give up Long Island until 1806. Now, back in 1935, the federal government passed the Historic Sites Act of 1935, which directed the Department of the Interior to prepare a list of nationally important properties in the United States. There's never been any sort of listing of important properties. That was the first effort to do that. And the Department of the Interior created this list of properties which they said were eligible for landmark status. And there were 62 properties in the United States. Most of them are in New England, Virginia, Pennsylvania, and so forth. Tennessee had one property indicated to be of national importance. And that was Long Island and Holston. And it's the only property. So it's